Hi, Sula. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks so much for joining us today. We are going to kick it right off like we always do. So we are doing our Gallery 51 featured artist segment that we do every 2 weeks. And we're really excited to have Sula Bermudez-Silverman here with us at the Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts. And this is just our opportunity to learn about all of the wonderful artists that are out there and what they're doing. So if everyone has looked at the information we've put on the website about Sula and been able to check out her work, I'm sure they're just as excited as we are to talk to you. So Sula, we're going to get right into it because our hour usually goes by really quickly. So tell us where are you talking to us from?
I'm in LA. Yeah, in Koreatown right now.
Okay. And so you are originally from California, but you did your graduate work on the East Coast. So you've been back in California for
2 years now.
2 years. Okay.
Yeah.
So you finished at Yale 2 years ago. And what discipline were you in? I know you do a lot of mixed media, but what department were you actually in?
Yeah, I was in the sculpture department.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
And so how has it been? Probably just really like most recently, how has it been working in Los Angeles?
Yeah. It's been, it's been nice, actually. It's really great to have a studio in my home, especially right now. Able to just, walk down the hallway and work, which I think is something that a lot of people in LA have because of the space.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think, I guess it's been about 2 years since we first met, and you come back to California, and I think I was still in Orange County at the time, and there were a lot of things going on. You were preparing for a show at University of Austin?
Yeah.
So
University of Texas, yeah.
Texas at Austin. And then tell us a little bit, so I can kind of go through a timeline that leads up to the show that you opened at the California African American Museum right before we all went into quarantine, and we can kind of talk about that. But for those of us that don't know about your work or your practice, can you just share a little bit about that?
Yeah. I guess I work in fiber textiles, mostly, but that's kind of, it's really just whatever I feel is most relevant to what the thing that I'm making is. So it's really hard to explain my practice because it's always changing. I'm really just learning whatever next thing I want to work with, rather than, being like a strict painter.
So what's been the primary focus of your work? I know you've dealt a lot with mixed race and identity. So tell us how that has kind of worked into maybe some of your more current pieces. And I don't know if you have, like, I think one of the things that got me about the pieces in the last show that you had, where I think you've shared them on Instagram, were the pieces that you actually break down in terms of race, and I think they're embroidered.
Yeah.
So like I don't know. I don't want to call it something that it's not.
It's a DNA chart.
A chart. Okay.
A DNA pie chart. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about that work, because it feels like a lot of the things that you talk about in your work are very personal and related to your family history, and the way that you understand how that works within the world, socially, politically. So yeah, can you tell us maybe about some of those pieces?
Yeah. So those pieces started when we all, like my immediate family all did the, DNA testing, which is, like problematic in other ways, because of the, data collection and all of that. But yeah, when we did that, I thought it was really interesting to be able to see the way that DNA breaks down, right? Because we all know that it's like 50% your father, 50% your mother, but you don't know which 50% of their DNA you're going to get. And so that's why siblings like look differently, because they get a different part of different parents' DNA. And so I was interested in also just seeing that. But on top of that, as somebody that originates from the Caribbean, you can sort of trace a history through that DNA, which I found really interesting. The idea of like, obviously I always knew that I was Puerto Rican, but I didn't necessarily understand what that meant. And what that means is that almost all Puerto Ricans have Spanish, Native, Taino, and African DNA. So, to be Puerto Rican, you have a mixture of DNA always. And so I thought it was interesting to be able to sort of just in a, pie chart, just to see that history, even though I don't know who those people were, what they were doing, if they were, clearly Spanish colonizers, but, and African slaves and then natives. So I like that idea of being able to kind of like imagine a history. So yeah, I started embroidering these small patches, just to be sort of able to see how the DNA breaks down. And then I started finding people on the website that were related to me. Like they give you like a list of hundreds of people that are like your fourth cousins. And so I started reaching out to those people and getting their DNA as well, because I thought, it was interesting to be able to see, especially Puerto Rican DNA. And what is interesting is that, in terms of like my mom's DNA, it's 100% of one thing rather than all of the different percentages. And you can very clearly see that when you see that on my sisters and I, it's 50%, right? But for me, it wasn't important what those colors represented, it was more important to see that breakdown. So I chose to not include a key for those pieces because I was sort of like a refusal to answer that question, which is like, something that a question that I've been asked since I was really young, which is like, what are you? Or, what are you? Which is also just like a weird question, but, and very othering, but so that there was sort of like a refusal to answer those questions. So there are no, I have the chart and I'm the only person that knows what the chart means. And so, and those are totally arbitrary, the colors. And then, I just continue to do that with other people who've done DNA tests, which, is complicated in other reasons, but if somebody's done it already, I like to, take those results. And really it's not about just people of color, because, like European ancestry can be just as interesting, and, just totally mixed as well. So Yeah. So I have quite a range of, different colors now.
Right.
And different people.
So it's really broadening kind of this representation or understanding of it without having to put labels or identifying it for what purpose.
Right.
Do you have an image of that? I can pull something up.
Yeah, I actually have some right here
Oh,
too.
great. Okay.
But yeah, so I kind of look at them as portraits. I don't have the ones of my family because they're in the show at CAM, but I have
okay.
some other ones. And then, I like to do it in terms of families. Because it's just interesting to see, like, these are three sisters, and it's interesting to see how the different DNA breaks down for each sibling, and how that can work, which is something that I've been interested in just because, you see, especially in my family, people who have the same DNA but look completely different. Yeah.
Has this always been kind of a motivation or thread in your work from the time you were studying, or doing your graduate work? Has this always been a thread, and it just kind of has shown itself in different ways based on the different medium that you use? Or has it been more of a recent kind of exploration? So I'm not as familiar with what you were doing, because I think even the work that I saw when you were in grad school, a lot of it was installation work. And I see the threads, but I'm wondering for you, in terms of this exploration, has it been this constant and evolved into this, or has this been kind of a new focus for you?
The DNA test specifically?
Yeah. And I guess the relationship or that representation of kind of our mixed background and looking at that history specifically with your family, but yeah, basically that this broadening of how we see it, because I think a lot of artists, whether they're talking about Blackness or that there is no real representation, yet there are these representations out there. So how are we reimagining or redefining that?
Yeah, I mean, I started these before I went to grad school, actually, and they're just kind of a series that will continue on. I just hope that I can just like kind of create like a mass library of portraits. But yeah, I think so. Definitely, I use my own, I guess, family history as a starting point. Just because it's what I know, and I think everyone does that, sort of uses what they know as a starting point to making the work.
So kind of shifting from the embroidery pie charts and what you've made as individual pieces, I love the other embroidery work you've done just on the white or kind of cloth that you've done. But then tell us now, because I wish we could reference some of the images from the CAM show or even your show in Austin, where you created the installation piece with the table and all of the different items. So going back to how do you use some of the things that either you find or you make and create your installation pieces? Because that's been a big part of your practice as well too. So yeah, tell us a little bit about some of the installation pieces and how they feed into this. And I don't have any images. I'll try and
yeah, I can show some images.
Okay.
Let me just take a look. Okay. Yeah, I'm not totally sure how to do this.
That's okay. Let me make sure.
Oh yeah, it says
it should allow. Try it now. I think I just allowed.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah, so with that, I guess these are the
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
images of that table. Oh, I was trying to find one that is open.
Okay.
No. Yeah, so on the right side, you can see how the table opens. And yeah, I mean, that work is a mixture of found objects and things that I made.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, this work definitely draws from, well, basically, it comes from my two grandmothers. And what I was thinking about was the two different religions that they practiced. Um, so on one side of my family, they practiced Judaism, and then my other grandmother practiced Santeria.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just sort of, in a way, like conjuring my grandmothers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, you know, the kind of links between those two religions, and really the um, sorry, I'm trying to think of the word, syncretism of Santeria. So again, it relates back to this, you know, DNA thing is like you can sort of something that actually manifests in the world as something, but that traces a history. So within the history, you can really see, I mean, within the history of the religion, you can really see what happened. So the two religions sort of merged together as a way to continue to practice a religion that was forbidden. And then it became something completely different. And really, you know, I mostly this, in terms of Judaism, it's the Seder plate, and the rituals of, you know, Passover, which I kind of talk about here. But on top of that, it's, you know, other objects that I sort of felt like could pass or become another thing. So a lot of things are combined, or cast in a material that doesn't make sense, or put in, you know, it's really hard to see in these photos, but there's a bunch of like basically, what is that, like indents in the table. So there's a bunch of like cutouts in the table, through the table, but also just on top of the table, like you know, like dremeling, or well, I used a router, but to make drawings. And then some of those objects are actually not in the place that, you know, they're supposed to go into. So you can see, you know, the object on the other table, and the position that it's supposed to be in on the other opposite side, or next to it, or, you know, or other objects are trying to fit into other positions,
Right.
or yeah, spaces. So yeah, I mean, and this piece also opens, it's usually just stays open so that you can go inside. Everything's sort of placed so that you can see it from the inside. And then there are 4 video screens as well, and those are all directed, like oriented to watch from the inside as well.
tell me a little bit about, so is this the only piece in the room, and is the lighting always like that? Because I mean, obviously there's a lot going on with the like the shadow and all of that. So is it just in one room?
Yeah, it's by itself. In this piece, this is the like original one that I made. I remade it again before the show in Austin.
Okay.
And that one is at CAM right now.
Okay.
And so it's actually, things are different in the newer version.
Okay.
But yeah, sorry, I totally forgot what you just said.
That's okay. Yeah, no, it just, I was talking a little bit more about the room, and that's a good, so because
the lighting, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get to see the show at CAM. So what did you do differently? And I remember an image that you showed from this exhibition, and I think it was a wall in which you had placed objects in like these little pouches, like these plastic. Now, is that related to this? And so what was that? And did you also do that at CAM?
Yeah. So, okay. So the lighting is, I want it normally to be like this. This is the ideal way that it would be. But it does not look like that at CAM. And that is because it's the room is full of other objects or other pieces. So I wasn't able to get the lighting this dramatic. And really, it wasn't this dark if you were actually there. Yeah, the photograph makes it darker. But yeah, though I think, let me see if I can find something else. The other work at CAM wasn't necessarily the same body of work. Just kind of was a collection of like all the work that I've done to date. Which is funny because it's like having like a retrospective at like 20 in my 20s. But yeah, so those works again are sort of like a series, the quilts, which are ongoing. I think most of the work that I make kind of is ongoing, or changes into something else. Sorry, trying to find pictures of those. But yeah.
And I'm wondering, it's interesting because you talked about it being like a retrospective or a culmination. I think that's a testament to how much you've been doing, at this point. And, it's funny. So Genevieve Gaignard is here. You both went to Yale. You both had these shows at CAM. And I think that was a really great opportunity for her as well. And I'm sure you're so disappointed that COVID came and closed it down right as it was about to open. But, she talks a lot about that being really pivotal in her career. And how was that? You've just done a show in Austin, but how was that experience for you in putting this show together with such a breadth of work and bringing it all together? How was that experience for you?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting just because, like, once something's done, you sort of forget about it and put it away. So here, let me show an image of those. Sorry, one second. Here we go. of those quilts, but
Oh, great.
which is
Okay.
how it's installed in the show right now. But yeah, I mean, it was open for two weeks, and then all of this hit. So, and I really don't know. It was supposed to run until the end of August,
Okay.
and we've talked about extending it, but at this point, like, who knows when that will be.
Sure.
But
So you
yeah.
suspended them from the ceiling here.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Oh, that's great. So you can go on both sides of it.
Well,
That wasn't how, is that how you had it before?
yeah, I mean, ideally you would be able to go on both sides, but at CAM,
Oh, I see the strand. Yeah, I see
yeah, so that you
I see the line.
yeah.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to like put all the work together because they weren't, you know, they're all different series of works, and to see them all in one room was interesting. Also, just to see that everything sort of has a connection, even if I didn't really think that they did.
Right.
Yeah. So these are all, they're basically like location, they're kind of like time capsules or something. So each one is, you know, a specific, the title is the location and the year.
Okay.
So each one is a different place that I've lived. So the one on the left was in Red Hook, New York, in like 2013. And then the one in the middle was the most recent one, which I made for CAM, which was in LA, you know, this year or last year. And then the one on the furthest on the right is Austin, which I made for that show in Austin, and that was like 2018. So it's kind of, if you look at the objects, they sort of, I mean, some of them indicate a location and a time, because a lot of, I mean, especially with the LA one, there's a lot of things like USB or, you know, even with some of them, things have already gone out of date, like the, you know, the iPhone headphones that, you know, have a different plug, you know?
Right.
Or a jewel is in the LA one. So yeah, there's different things that sort of place them in a specific time period.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about when you said when you looked around, you realized maybe that it was more related than you thought. What was that through line for you that you know created that kind of understanding for you when you looked around?
Yeah. I guess, I mean, in a lot of ways, like there's a similar color palette, but also I think a lot of it sort of dealt with ancestry and history, and the ways that affects, you know, the current. So yeah, yeah, I would say like the way that the past kind of affects the now.
Right.
And the, you know, the systems of power that are at play. a lot has to do with power, I think, and sort of like forgotten histories or like hidden kind of biases. Yeah.
What, because I mean, just in terms of, like, I'm curious your process, like you gather so many different pieces for your work, whether it's things that sounds like you've kept, you've salvaged, you've created. And I'm just wondering about your process, how much of it, and given that you deal so much with history, whether it's in relationship to your ancestry, how much of your work do you think requires a certain amount of research?
Yeah. I think there's like actually a heavily research-based practice. I mean, especially right now, it's like I don't always have the space or time or motivation to be physically making work. So a lot of it actually goes into like the research. I would say that's half of the work, is really like reading and you know, thinking about these things. Yeah, I definitely. Especially right now. I mean, like that's what I'm preparing for another show that was supposed to be in November, but it's been moved to March now. And yeah, that, I mean, haven't really made much work yet for it, but I've just been doing research for the past few months.
Right. Well,
So
I asked that because I think, you know, many of our artists who deal with some of the same subject matter with regard to race and politics and, you know, social structure, specifically looking at it historically, as you've talked about, it does require an immense amount of research. And it's interesting how much of that is a part of practice, but how challenging that can be, even more so than actually creating the work. I think to some degree, you know, it's funny you mentioned motivation, that it can in actuality be the motivator or inspiration for a body of work rather than being decided on the body of work and researching it. And I think that's an important part for everyone to understand, but that we don't often acknowledge with artist practice.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think it's a huge part. I mean, it is what starts my work. I never really start with the material. It always starts with the idea, and something that's inspired me.
Right.
So yeah, it is interesting. Like that is a big part of my work. And I guess it's hard because we're, you know, told that we need to be continuously making.
Right.
And I've been sort of trying to push back from that idea, of like constantly putting something out into the world. Because for me, like, I really don't like to put something out that's not ready. But on top of that, like a huge part of it is, you know, research and thinking. And that's hard to like materialize, or show that that's what you're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it is very product driven. You know, it is about which is interesting at this particular moment in time, that we actually aren't able in a lot of instances to show the product. So I think it's opportunities like this to actually hear and understand. I know Veronica and I have had many conversations lately with artists about this particular time as an opportunity to stop and do all the things that often have to be put aside or not acknowledged as part of the practice, or know that the art making is part of it, but the research is a huge part, and just stopping and not feeling that same sense of urgency to create to meet a deadline, because right now all deadlines have been either eliminated or pushed back significantly.
Right.
Been, I think, a bit, and it sounds like maybe for you too, a bit liberating right now that you aren't having to do it in the same way.
Right.
That you had to.
Definitely. I mean, I've taken this time to really do a lot of reading, which has been really nice, because it's like, you know, I don't really have that opportunity all the time, and especially artists who have other jobs. So, you know, in order to make money, like, that was a lot of the time, it's like you're making, I mean, at least for me, I'm usually an artist assistant, so it's like I'm making someone else's work, and then like I come home and it's like I don't really want to make more like my own work anymore. So yeah, right now it's like, because I don't have a job, it's like I'm able to really engage with, you know, the ideas that I'm really interested in. Yeah.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about that, because that's often a conversation that I have with a lot of artists about not just the motivation to create or finish the work for a show, but just the ability to actually create after having to do other work. I've heard some people say they motivate themselves by like challenging, like, you know, it doesn't matter. I'll be darned if I worked 8 hours. I will prove that I can put up, you know, stay up another 8 hours and do this work.
Yeah.
So I could finish. And then others that is, you know, it's just really, it's challenging. So how does that, so it sounds like for you, you kind of just work through it.
Yeah, I mean, I've like really had the privilege of being in school for a really long time, that I haven't had to. And then like after coming out of school, these past 2 years, like I really haven't, I mean, I've had so many jobs. I can't even tell you like how many jobs I've had in the past 2 years, but like I've also had significant periods of time where I haven't had to work, which has been really nice. So I can't really I can't imagine how it would be to be working, you know, 40 hours a week and then making your own work on top of that. I don't know if I could do that. It's pretty challenging. I've like really been lucky that, you know, at least for the cam show, I just had some time and was given, you know, money to be able to not have to work for, you know, a few months. But yeah, I think it would be super challenging to do that. I've just been like super lucky that I haven't had to do that so far.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I really don't even know how people do that. I guess the weekends. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think, you know, we've talked a lot too about I think also your plan in terms of being an artist and going and completing an MFA versus not. I mean, lots of decisions go into the way in which you can navigate your career differently than others. You know, I feel like, but I think at the end of the day, the proof is in the pudding of the work. And I think, again, that's probably a lot of the result of you not having to do it maybe the way others have. So what right now, like, so you said that you're working on work for a show in March. So tell us a little bit about what you're working on.
Yeah. I am sort of continuing the work that I made for CAM, which was the houses that are made out of sugar. And Yeah, I mean, the cam show really was super quick. Like I think I had 3 months to make that work. So I didn't feel like I had enough time to really kind of complete it
Right.
in the way that I wanted to. So I'm continuing to work with sugar. And really, I don't know how that's going to manifest completely. I mean, I can show you one thing that kind of the only thing that I've made so far, which is just like this thing that is like a transparent image that's encased in sugar. And yeah, I mean, right now, I guess this really like actually is funny because it's a page and it's writing. But yeah, really that's kind of what I've been doing right now is just like researching and reading. And not necessarily on the history of sugar because I kind of have like exhausted that, but right now actually I'm kind of interested in these histories of monsters or like horror characters, so like zombies, cannibals, and vampires. And you know, like the histories behind those, how those sort of legends came to be. And I guess cannibals is not really a legend, but yeah, so that kind of block of sugar is like a drawing or an engraving of like a depiction of like that the colonizers of the New World sort of like depicting Caribbean. So they're like these humans that have dog heads in the image, and they're like chopping up human to eat. So you know, that was sort of like, you know, Christopher Columbus came over and sort of like called Caribbeans cannibals. Actually, I think, yeah, he came up with that word. So really, yeah, I've been interested in the ways that the Caribbeans have been depicted in history. And it's really interesting that they're like half human, half dog, because at the same time it's like makes no sense, because how can they be cannibals if they're dogs? But really it's about like the idea that they're animals, but it's contradictory. Yeah.
And do you have an image of the sugar, of any of your sugar houses? Just so we can show folks. I know that Cam did that great little video and it showed a little bit about it. So I was like, oh, that'd be great for folks to see.
Yeah.
How long does that take you? Like the process of creating like the houses that you did for Cam?
Yeah. So this is the back of like 5 of them. There are 10 in the show. 9 are made out of sugar and 1's made out of glass. And really, I would try to make one in like one whole day. So usually that didn't happen, but the reason that was what I was trying to do is that the sugar changes like immediately.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it was a really tricky, and that's part of, I feel like I didn't have enough time to really understand the material because it was constantly changing, and I was doing lots of tests. And so actually I feel like these are like prototypes in a way, even though like they obviously took so much time, but they feel sort of like they were tests. They all have different finishes.
Mm-hmm.
So some, like the pink one doesn't have any anything on it. It's just the sugar.
Okay.
And you can sort of see that it like fogs up, and it's not translucent anymore. And so I sort of was trying to get them to be translucent, and trying all these different kinds of you know, shellacs and resins and different ways to do that. I mean, it took months to like really figure out the best way to do it, and still that doesn't completely, they still change over time.
Right.
And so I really had to like learn how to let the material do what it was going to do.
Right.
And stop like trying to control it.
Right.
Let me see if I can, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to find one from the
That's okay.
front.
What are the dimensions on those?
Yeah, let's see. They are 25 and a half tall.
Okay.
And like 19 inches wide. Yeah. So, and then the light boxes that I made underneath them, those are like 42 inches high.
Okay.
So they're like pretty tall.
Right.
And like sort of wobbly, like they're on these like thin legs. So basically they're at eye level so that you can see them.
Yeah, that was what I was wondering. Like if you had to bend down to look through them, but you put them, that's amazing. So you made the light boxes too for them.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It looked, I mean, it looked beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah. It definitely was like experimenting. This is, here we go. It definitely was sort of trying to figure out the best way, but it's hard to see, but they all like look completely different.
Yeah.
Like I said, they have different finishes. Some of them were sprayed, some of them like were painted on. And I have no idea what's going to happen, in time, with them degrading.
Yeah. Out of these 5 that are here, like which one was done, like which one is the most recent versus the one that was done first? Just
yeah. So the first one is the closest one, actually.
Okay.
And yeah, so it like fogged up, which like, yeah, I just like relinquished all control of what I was, trying to do to like make these like perfect things. Right. And I don't remember, I think the last one, the last one was actually is on the other side. It was the amber one. And that, that was another thing, is like figuring out how to get a specific color. I had to dye them. Yeah, let's see. yeah, so the amber one, how do I do this? Here we go. So
Are those figures inside too? Oh, I thought I saw something.
oh yeah, here.
Yeah.
Those are, yeah. Those are glass.
Okay.
So this one I think was the most recent one. I'm just trying to find like how that one, yeah. From the front. There we go. Okay.
Oh, wow.
So that one, did it just stop sharing?
No, we see it.
Okay. This one, actually, I don't know if it's too dark, but the poles are actually made out of glass.
These two?
Yeah.
Okay.
The 4 poles in the front are made out of glass.
Okay.
But the rest is sugar. And that, like, nobody knows that. But, and that was, you know, interesting to me, is like the slippage of not really being able to tell. But yeah,
Right.
that was the last one. And that was, you know, that's one I finally figured out how to do certain things, you know, and how to keep this one clear. But, you know, I also just took these photographs a few months later, so it's actually fogged up.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
So these were taken later. Interesting. All right.
Yeah, I went to the museum when it was closed, like a few weeks ago, to take some photos, and just to see what had happened to the houses, because I didn't know if they would, you know, have collapsed or anything like that.
Right.
And it's like fogged up. You can see sort of on the left one a little bit. But yeah, I just kind of am, letting that happen.
Right. Yeah, me too. I'm sort of starting to think like how do you preserve those? And I think that in and of itself is kind of an ongoing question and process. But if you're still working on those, you're probably going to find out a lot more. As we head out, like what is it to date? You know, I think it's amazing to see all of the work that you've done in a relatively short amount of time, and sounds like you're working on new things. What do you feel that you've, the most important thing you've learned within your practice to date? Like what stands out to you?
I think I sort of talked about it already, but, you know, just the idea that I'm allowed to not be constantly making. You know, like I know it sounds simple, but it's something that really you're kind of like taught, especially in school, to like be producing so much. And like, first of all, what does that mean for the environment? But secondly, on like the human psyche, like it's a lot of pressure to be like constantly like producing and being like a machine. So I'm letting myself, because also I don't always feel like making. That's the other thing, is that like it takes me some time to, especially because I don't just make out of, you know, there's certain people who make out of their, I don't know, mind or their you know, imagination, rather than the way that I, you know, my research-based practice. So yeah, I think that like I've just been sort of learning, and it's really important to learn that it's okay to like not constantly be physically making something, but learning,
Right.
or researching. or resting.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, self-care is usually not even acknowledged within most disciplines, but I think especially within the arts and artists. And so it sounds like you have a show coming up in March. I don't know if you want to tell us about that, but are there things that you're looking forward to, whether it be within the practice or making, or do you want to share?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to making a new body of work. I mean, it will be kind of extended from what I've already made at CAM, but I do want to sort of continue that work, and like not perfect it, but you know, master what I'm trying to do.
Right, right. I know that there are lots of different things I'm sure that you are looking forward to doing, and it's unfortunate that it's in the midst of this pandemic that you're having to do it, but I really appreciate you just, sharing with us a little bit about your work. And I know that you're in the midst of a move, so the next time we talk with you, hopefully we'll be able to see your new space and and check in to see what you're doing. But it's always really exciting to learn more about your work. I've really enjoyed kind of watching your growth. So I'm looking forward to see what you do next.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely, it's our pleasure. And again, do keep us updated. We'd love to share what you're doing with other folks. And hopefully when all of this resolves itself, we'll see you out here in the Berkshires.
Yeah, I hope so. Thank you
Thanks
so
so much, Sula. And thanks for spending the time. And we hope to talk to you soon. Be well and be safe.
You too. Thanks so much.
Bye. Thank you.